Shalom. So I'm going to let you guys know that I have literally recorded this video at least 4 or 5 times now. I've also attempted to record this video a few times as well. And it's always something that keeps me from being able to actually put this video out. So hopefully if you're hearing this, it's because I finally succeeded in getting this video out. And because of the topic of the video, I have a feeling that that's the reason why there's so much opposition against me trying to get it out. The other thing I'm going to say is just to listen to the entire video. The video is talking about discernment. And I'll just say go read Proverbs 18:13-15, right? So the gist of it is, just to listen to a matter fully before you make a judgment against it or a judgment period, right? And that is actually operating in righteousness. We are supposed to hear the end of a matter before we make a judgment about it, right? And with this video being about discernment, I just wanted to throw that in there because we are supposed to be operating in discernment. That is something that Yahushua taught us. That is something that we can see in Yahuwah's law, right? Some of the most important things that Yahuwah has been teaching me about discernment is, number one, discernment being one of the gifts of the Ruach HaQadash. We are supposed to handle the gifts that Yahuwah gives us in righteousness. So first and foremost, if you are able to righteously discern a thing, you're not supposed to use that against a person, right? Discernment, first and foremost, when you discern something going on with yourself, it's meant to help you, right? So if you're discerning that you tend to have an attitude when it comes to certain topics or whatnot, you're supposed to, well, if you're observing that you have an attitude when it comes to certain topics or whatnot, you're supposed to discern that, hey, there's an issue going on within me. I need to go to Yahuwah about this, right? But when it comes to other people, there's two reasons why you need to be able to discern what's going on in a situation with other people. One is to protect you from whatever it is that's going on, especially if they are a vessel of the enemy. And I like to call those ministers of chaos. So especially if they're a minister of chaos, you need to be able to discern that so you know how to operate, with that person, with that being, with that vessel. But also, it's used as a ministry tool as well, especially when it comes to your brothers or sisters. Because if you can discern that there's something going on with your brothers and sisters, then you can then be led by Yahuwah to minister to them, like, pray for them, counsel them, whatever it is that Yahuwah leads you to do. But you can use that for that purpose. What we're not supposed to be doing is using it to fault find. Discernment is not meant to be used to fault find. And what I mean by that is you're not supposed to be looking for things that are wrong with people. You're just supposed to be aware of them when they present themselves through discernment, okay? Also, I have to take this time to mention that your hatred towards someone, your dislike towards someone, your jealousy of someone, your assumptions of someone is not discernment, okay? That is literally indicative of something that's going on within your own heart. Because why are you jealous of people? Why are you angry towards them? Why do you hate them? That's a sign something's going on within you. So that is discernment towards your own heart, but it doesn't necessarily mean there's something going on with that person. Something that I will tell you to look out for is if you hear someone say, there's just something about that person, understand Ruach HaQadash is the spirit of Yahuwah who knows everything. Yahuwah is not questioning what it is that is going on with another person. So if Ruach HaKadash is speaking through that person, they are going to be able to tell you what it is that's going on with that person. There's just something about them is literally the spirits or the spirit or the heart posture. Basically, you're being able to discern something going on in the person that's speaking and not the object of their speech. Okay? Discernment. Ruach HaKadash knows, the enemy doesn't. there's something about there's just something about them is meant to start casting doubt towards that person, right? And one of the most important things that we have to remember is that righteousness is not a competition. We're not out here competing to see who can be the most righteous in Yahuwah's kingdom. We're out here submitting ourselves to Yahuwah so that he can clean the inside of our cup, and then we can dwell with him in Yahusha in the renewed Jerusalem. That's what we're out here doing. And if we're able to help our brother and sister along the way by being discerning of what's going on with them, then so be it. But again, we're not supposed to use it as a weapon against each other. It's meant to assist us in carrying out Yahuwah's will in and through us, right? So some of the things that Yahuwah has shown me as far as, discernment. So I know that I have a few videos prior to this one where I told you guys about how Ruach HaQadash told me to pray a prayer about walking in step with Yahuwah, right? And when I prayed that prayer, I didn't realize that Yahuwah had been answering the prayer because I had started to actually slow down and take my time in a lot of things. The number one thing that I slowed down and took my time in was healing. I no longer felt like I needed to rush to be healed. I needed to heal at the pace that Yahuwah was healing me at, instead of trying to hurry up and heal so I can, be there for other people. Because the thing about it is, if I don't properly heal, I'm not going to be able to be there for other people the way I need to be there for other people. Something in me is going to wind up hurting someone when I don't take the time to heal properly, right? And I'm going to also probably wind up injuring myself even more. Think about if you have a broke leg. If you don't take the time to let your leg heal properly, then you can actually wind up re-injuring your leg, right? Which, yeah, that could probably be painful. But anyway, so yeah, once I started taking the time, slowing down and taking the time to heal the way I needed to heal, the way Yahuwah wants us to heal, that's when I started being able to see, that's when my discernment increased. And I didn't realize it right away. It was just certain situations that normally most of us tend to get offended in. Certain situations started arising around me, and I realized instead of being offended, I was more aware of things. And again, discernment brings about awareness. So discernment can show you the motive of, the spirits that are around you. Discernment can show you where they are, like which vessels they're located in. Like discernment can show you a whole bunch of things. But you have to be walking with Yahuwah in order to see it, because if you're operating in your flesh is going to immediately become offended. And that is the goal of the enemy, because the enemy seeks to pull us out of the Ruach HaQadash so that the will of Yahuwah cannot be done in and through us. Now we know that Yahuwah's will be done regardless, but it doesn't stop the enemy from attempting to stop the will of Yahuwah from being done, which is the reason why Yahuwah gave us armor in the first place, right? A very quick example of what I'm talking about is if you're a selfless person, someone that's always giving, someone that doesn't hold it over somebody's head when you give to them, someone that will literally give the shirt off your back. You don't announce it. You don't brag about it. None of that stuff. You just give in silence. You give in private and you give joyfully, right? And then a minister of chaos comes and calls you selfish. The goal of that minister of chaos, without them even realizing it, is to pull you out of the Ruach, because the first thing that we naturally want to do is defend ourselves and prove that we aren't selfish. And we'll say, no, I'm not, because I did this and I did that and I did that. And we start listing all the things that we've done that nobody knows about. But the thing about it is Ruach HaQadash knows about it. So if that person had Ruach HaQadash inside of them, then they would not be coming to you and lying on you. Think about Yahusha. When Yahusha was being called everything except for the son of Yahuwah, he didn't say anything. He didn't say anything at all, because he understood that they were not operating in his father's Ruach. So there's no reason for me to do so. There was multiple reasons why he didn't say anything that I'm not going to go into. But yeah, he didn't say anything. That is our example not to say anything either, especially because he understood that his assignment was to be hung on the tree for the remission of our sins, right? So he couldn't defend himself, because if he defended himself, he would actually be thwarting the plans of his father, the will of his father. And because he was obedient to his father even unto death, he had to let them say what they were saying and not say anything back to them, right? Same thing that we're supposed to do. Do not allow yourself to be pulled away from the things that Yahuah has you doing by you attempting to defend yourself. Because again, Ruach HaQadash knows what you are and aren't doing. So if you know for a fact that you are doing X, Y, and Z, there's no need for you to try to defend yourself against an unclean Ruach. Let Yahuah defend you, and you focus on what it is that Yahuah has you doing. Now, when it comes to discerning what's going on in the moment, for instance, and sometimes we have to do that for ourselves, right? Something that's going on with us, right? So I recently visited my mother, and my younger brother was there with me. He decided to order food for us. I went with him to the restaurant to go pick up the food. The order was in his name. When you go into the restaurant, first of all, it was just me and him. There were no other customers. It was just us and the employees. When you go into the restaurant, the orders are in this glass case. It has a screen above it. It tells you which slot your order is in. Your name will be next to that number, right? So we walked in. We saw that his name was next to slot number 3. And so he was on his phone looking for the code to put into the glass case so he can get his stuff out. A woman came out the back and in while he was doing that, and she said, "What's the name on the order?" And I gave my brother's name, and I said, "Yeah, he's getting his code right now so he can get it out." Well, she waved her hand dismissively, and it sounded like she said, "I don't care about all that." Ruach HaKadash instantly froze me, because I could feel the inner clap back in me rising up from the pits of my belly. Whew, I could feel it, but I was frozen in that moment, because yeah, I was just frozen. I could feel myself. It was like Yahuah just pressed the pause button real quick, and I couldn't move or anything. But I'm glad that happened, because the longer I sat there, I started realizing that that's not actually what she said. I don't remember verbatim what she said, but she had just told us that we didn't have to put in the code because she was going to get the food for us. And that's exactly what she did. Part of the reason why I thought that she had said what she said, other than me thinking that that's what I heard, was she also had a very meh type of attitude, and she waved her hand dismissively when she said it. So everything just screamed she had an attitude, right? But again, Yahuah pressed the pause button on me, and my brain was able to fully hear what it was that she said. Remember what I said about Proverbs 18:13? Gotta hear a matter out fully before you answer it. Well, I hadn't even heard the matter yet, because I heard something entirely different than what she actually said. Once I heard what she actually said, then my DEFCON threat level went from atomic back to peaceful, right? So I wasn't preparing to fire back anymore, because that's not what she said. But let's look at the situation, okay? Let's discern the situation. So for whatever reason, I heard something wrong. And again, my eyes and my hearing deceived me in that moment, because I was putting 2 and 2 together. It looked like she had an attitude. I heard something that sounded like she had an attitude. So my assessment was, oh, this chick has an attitude. You know what I'm saying? That was my assessment. But Yahuah had to pause me and go, look again. And when I looked at the situation again, I realized, no, it's something going on with me that caused me to feel like this is what was going on, to cause me to hear incorrectly, right? And I will tell you this, I had experienced a few things on my way down to visit my mom. So that was probably festering on the inside of me, and that probably contributed to me not being able to hear this woman correctly. And Yahuah kept me from escalating a situation that did not need to be escalated. And we don't know what's going on with people. Who's to tell what could have happened? Who's to tell that I wouldn't have said something snarky back to her, and then she pull out a gun and start shooting, or we just get into a fight and we both get arrested. Anything could have happened that didn't need to happen, because I misheard what she said. But the discerning factor in that situation is that there was a misunderstanding that was going on. It was something going on with me that was causing me not to hear correctly. And a lot of misunderstandings can be thwarted if we just slow down, we pause, and we allow our brain to really process what's going on. That's that discernment, that slowing down. James 1:19 and 20 says that we're supposed to be slow to speak, quick to listen, slow to wrath, because the wrath of man doesn't bring about the righteousness of Yahuah, right? So in that moment, I had to represent Yahuah. And if I had if I had gotten an attitude back with her, I would not have been representing Yahuah. And let's take it a step even further. Let's say immediately after I left that restaurant, I wound up running into someone that Yahuah placed in my path for me to minister to. But because I decided I was going to cuss the woman out in the restaurant, now I have stepped outside of the Ruach HaQadash. So now I can't adequately minister to that person. You see what I'm saying? Like, there is a domino effect that goes on. Another thing that we have to be overly aware of is all of the different teachings and doctrines that we hear going on around us. I know I've said it on other videos, and I'm going to keep saying it until Yahuah tells me not to. Yahuah needs to be teaching us right now, right? Because there are so many things that sound like the truth but are not the truth, right? The enemy's not going to come looking and sounding like the enemy. The enemy is going to come looking and sounding like Yahushua, who is the truth. So with that being said, I have personally heard so many things that if Yahuah hadn't taught me certain things already personally, I would probably be like, that actually sounds like it could be true. That actually sounds like that makes sense to me. You know what I'm saying? But we're not supposed to lean to our own understanding. We're supposed to allow Yahuah to order our steps, allow Yahuah to reveal things to us, right? And the thing about it is, a lot of these things that we're, a lot of the information from the world is flimsy, right? Extremely flimsy. You can't stand on it because you'll hear something over here that sounds like, oh yeah, that sounds like it makes sense. And then you'll hear something over here that contradicts that and it makes even more sense. So now you're over here with this new doctrine, and then somebody comes along and they refutes that and they present you with yet another doctrine. And now you're being tossed to and fro by the waves, right? Go to Matthew 7:24-28 and you'll see what I'm talking about. That's a house built on sinking sand. You can't do that. You need to be built on that solid rock. That is Yahuah's teaching, is that solid rock. So when Yahuah teaches you, you won't be tossed to and fro. Now the thing about this is, enter in discernment. When Yahuah has taught you a thing and you are standing on that solid rock, then when someone else comes along and they're talking to you and it's not lining up with what Yahuah taught you, and Yahuah is never going to contradict himself, okay? So if you in your own studying ever come to a contradiction in Yahuah's word, understand that your perception is off and you need to ask Yahuah for clarity. But again, Yahuah taught you something, you're standing on solid foundation when it comes to that teaching, and then somebody comes along and they are saying something that contradicts what it was that Yahuah taught you. First and foremost, you know where your knowledge came from. It came from Yahuah. So you already know that this is an unclean spirit. This is a minister of chaos. You already know that. So now, with that discernment in mind, you need to properly move in this situation. You need your spidey senses need to go off. You need to discern the moment and what's going on and understand that this vessel was not sent in peace. They are not a vessel of peace. So you have to make sure your armor is on and ready to be used in that moment, right? You can't just be walking around la-di-da-di-da and not realizing that, hey, this person was sent to slaughter you, okay? Like, they were sent to pull you away from Yahuah. You know what I'm saying? And what Yahuah taught me about, one of the things Yahuah taught me about discernment is when it comes to, so I mentioned Matthew 7. So Matthew 7:15-16 talks about how to know, 15-20 talks about how to tell a good tree from a bad tree, a good tree from a corrupt tree, right? And Yahushua specifically told us that a good tree can't produce evil fruit and a corrupt tree can't produce good fruit, right? Here's the thing. Determining what type of a tree a person is, and that's just determining the type of person that they are, right? Determining what type of tree they are, good or corrupt, takes time. That is not a split second decision that you can make, right? And the reason for that is, for instance, all of us have had what we would call a bad day, a bad moment or whatnot. Let's say you're having one of those moments. You're usually walking in the Ruach and doing everything that you're supposed to, but you just happen to be having like just a bad moment right now, right? And then somebody comes along and meets you in that moment. Would it be fair for them to assess you from that one moment, when every moment leading up to that one moment you did what you were supposed to, but then they happen to come right when you did the wrong thing, and now they're like, oh, they're evil? That's not a fair assessment, right? Especially because 9 times out of 10, they're not going to go home with you and see how you confess to Yahuah what you did wrong in that moment. They're not going to see you repent. You know what I'm saying? A good tree repents. A good tree confesses and repents. A good tree holds themselves accountable. But what a bad tree, a corrupt tree, is not going to do is hold themselves accountable. A corrupt tree is not going to repent. So the corrupt tree is going to blame shift, deflect, project, so on and so forth, gaslight, manipulate. That's what the evil, corrupt tree is going to do, right? But that still takes time. Yahuah, the way Yahuah taught this to me was he took me to Leviticus 13. That whole chapter talks about how Masha told Aaron and his sons, who were the Levitical priests, how to determine, one, if there was a leprosy in a man, and then two, if it was spreading or if it was healing. That process took time. They didn't just walk up on somebody, see a spot, and go, oh, yep, that's leprosy. The priest had to view what was going on, lock the person up. Well, it says shut them up for 7 days. Come back, view what was going on again, shut them up for another 7 days, and then come back. If the leprosy seemed to be healing, then they pronounced them clean. They went through the process of cleaning them. If the leprosy seemed to be spreading, they marked them as unclean, and they, went on their way. So determining the type of tree a man or a person is, it takes some time. You have to observe a constant or consistent behavior in this person. Are they consistently evil? Are they consistently good? Do they consistently show the fruits of the Ruach HaQadash, or do they consistently show the works of the flesh? You have to observe that. However, you can in the moment discern what's going on with a person. So remember, let's take it back to you having a bad moment, right? In that bad moment, a person with discernment can see, okay, they're stressed out, or they're irritated, or they can see what you have going on with you. And a person with discernment is going to know how to handle what you have going on. And they're not going to necessarily label you as an evil tree just because you had a bad moment. The whole reason why we're able to confess and repent is because Yahuah knows we're going to have some bad moments. Because in the process of us being healed, we have a whole bunch of stuff coming up out of us, right? And as that's going on, we still have to live our life. We still have to go to work. We still have to run our households. We still have to take care of our children. We still have to go and be around other people when Yahuah is doing this spiritual cleaning of the inside of our cup. So there's going to be times where people are going to see us and we're not at our best, right? Yahuah knows that, though. And he's teaching us how to determine when it's a moment like that, or when this is just how this person is. Okay? This is important because Yahushua told us that even the elect would be deceived if possible, right? That was a warning. That was a warning that if we don't remain in a state of discernment, if we don't watch and pray, we will be deceived. So you have to remain watchful, prayerful. You have to discern situations, right? And that requires you to slow down. It requires you to slow down. Can't operate in your flesh. And sticking with Matthew 7, if you go to verses 3 to 5, where Yahushua talks about um, taking the plank out of your eye before you can see fit to take the speck out of your brother's. I know some translations say mote, but it's basically the same thing. Plank and speck are the ones that always come to my mind. But anyway, he's talking about atonement. So Yahuwah took me to Leviticus 16 when it came to that. So Masha was teaching his brother Aaron about how to make atonement for himself in Yasharal. And I don't remember the exact verse. I always say go read the entire chapter, which you should anyway. But at one point in time, we see that Aaron has to make atonement for himself first, then his household, then he has to make atonement for Yasharal, right? That is a process that we're being shown. Your atonement has to be for you first. Has to be for you first. Then it's for your household. Your household could be your bloodline. And what I mean by bloodline, I mean by like your immediate family and your extended family. Those are the first people you should be ministering to anyway. And then whoever Yahuwah leads you to outside of that. But you always need to go to your household first. There's no reason why we are making atonement and then skipping our household. You know what I'm saying? Especially because when Yahuwah says that judgment comes first to his household, his judgment is, his chastening is love. He said he chastens those that he loves. The reason why judgment comes to his household first is so he can get some act right in us. So then we can turn around and we can teach the other nations how to get some act right in them. That is how things are supposed to operate. So he comes to his household first. Why wouldn't we come to ours? You know what I'm saying? That's one way you can discern a thing. But going back to the whole atonement thing, right? When Yahusha mentions that you got to take the plank out of your eye so you can see clearly to remove the speck from your brothers, when you make atonement for yourself with Yahuwah, you receive his Ruach. And Ruach HaQadash is how we're able to see clearly, right? Because without Ruach HaQadash, we see through the trauma of our flesh. And that's what I was talking about earlier. So you perceive things and you see things through the trauma of your flesh. So whatever hurt and pain you've gone through, you're always going to view things from that mentality. You're always going to have a victim's mentality. But when you receive the spirit of Yahuwah, the Ruach of Yahuwah, now you can see clearly because you're seeing things from Yahuwah's perspective at that point in time. That's how you're able to count it all joy when you find yourself into all kinds of trials and tribulations. That's how you're able to give Yahuwah praise in the midst of something that the world would call a tragedy or whatnot. That's how you're able to do it because you don't see things the way the world sees them. You see things the way Yahuwah sees them. We are supposed to be transformed by the renewing of our mind, right? The renewing of our mind, right? Ruach HaKadash is what renews our mind because it's no longer us that lives, it's Mashiach that lives in and through us. So we see things differently, right? But we have to make atonement for ourselves first in order for us to do that for our brother. And notice that we are assisting our brothers with their healing. Notice that was the purpose of our atonement. It wasn't for us to say, nanny nanny boo boo, I'm more righteous than you. It was for us to go assist our brothers and sisters. Because again, righteousness is not a competition. We're not here trying to be the servant. Remember when Yahusha's disciples were like, who's the greatest in the kingdom? And he was like, yo, the one that serves everybody. Yeah, so that's pretty much what I'm talking about right now. Like, that's the one that's the greatest. The one that's the greatest is the one that's not looking to be the greatest. You know what I'm saying? You're the one that's looking to help everybody get to where they need to be so they can walk with Yahuwah the way you're walking with Yahuwah. That's the one that Yahuwah is going to deem as the greatest, right? But with all these things going on in the world right now, it's very important that we're using discernment in every situation, every avenue of our life. If you get fired from your job, don't get upset. Use your discernment. See what's going on beyond the surface. See what's going on in the spirit versus what's going on in the flesh, right? If you get into a car accident, if you're trying to leave the house and everything keeps keeping you, everything keeps popping up to keep you from leaving the house. And like little things like that. Use your discernment. Slow down and discern a thing. We have to be prudent and wise in these times. We can't be sitting and just rushing through life, not paying attention to anything. Because here's the thing. Some of you listening to this have been walking with you, Yahuah, for quite some time now. So there's no excuse to still be making the same mistakes that we were making before. And I'm not saying that in a negative way. I'm saying that hopefully in a way that exhorts you to come a little bit closer to Yahuah so that he can help you to grow. Because if we're not growing, that means we're not producing fruit. And that means that we're not connected to the vine. Because every branch that's not connected to the vine, it withers away. Men gather them and they're tossed into the fire. Isn't that what Yahushua taught us? We have to remain connected to the vine so we can produce more and more and more righteous fruit, right? We are not children of the world. We are children of Yahuwah. So I'm just going to leave it right there. Yeah, it's very important to use discernment. Again, I made several videos. I probably am leaving out some of the things I said in those videos. That's okay, because I feel like I said what I was supposed to in this particular video, and maybe that's the reason why this one's going a little bit more smoother than the other videos. If there's something that I left out, I'm pretty sure Yahuwah will just have me make another video, but I don't think there is. I think everything I was meant to say this time is what I said. And hopefully it helps, okay? Actually, there is one more thing that I do want to add in there, and that is using your discernment in a situation like whenever you see someone that is speaking publicly, witnessing publicly to Yahusha, serving Yahuwah publicly, right? And then you have a group of people, or maybe just one person, that is constantly challenging everything they're saying. They did the same thing to Yahusha, okay? So listen to what I'm saying. When you see that happening, 9 times out of 10, it is a minister of chaos that is attempting to discredit the witness of the person that's speaking and plant seeds of doubt in the minds of those that are listening, right? Because the goal of the enemy is to keep us away from Yahuwah, right? And to scatter his children so that we're not coming together like we're supposed to. So with that being said, think about what happened with Yahusha. Yahusha had, in Matthew 22, it talks about how the Pharisees heard that Yahusha had silenced the Sadducees with a question they had asked about whose woman would this woman be? She was married to 7 brothers. None of them had kids through her. Whose woman would she be in the resurrection? Yahuwah put them to silence with his answer. So then it says that the Pharisees came to him, and one of them that was a lawyer asked him what was the greatest commandment of all, right? So this lawyer asked Yahusha about the law. And it specifically said in those verses that they did it to tempt him, to tempt Yahusha, right? So they weren't being genuine in their coming to him. They were trying to trip him up and get him to say something so they could find a fault and they could accuse him. Who's the accuser of the brethren? The adversary. So you can already discern what Ruach is actually operating in and through them. It's not Ruach HaQadash. There's another instance where they called Yahushua outside of his name. Leading up to that point, though, it said that the leaders of Yasharal sought false witnesses against Yahusha so that they could put him to death, right? That was their motive behind looking for people that were willing to lie about Yahusha. The leaders of Yasharal. I did not say the leaders of Rome, the leaders of Greece. I didn't say those leaders. The leaders of Yasharal were seeking people that were willing to lie on Yahusha so that they could put him to death. Discernment. You have to be operating in discernment. When Yahusha told us to be as sly as a serpent, but as gentle as a dove, he wasn't talking about operating in deception. He was telling us to be aware of the motives and the be aware of the motives and the operations of the enemy while still walking in righteousness. That's what he meant by that, okay? And now is the time more so than ever that we need to be doing that, because it's a lot going on. And if you're constantly paying attention to that, you're not paying attention to what Yahuah is showing you. You're not doing what Yahuah is telling you to do, because you're too busy paying attention to what's going on in the world. Everything going on in the world right now, Yahusha said it was going to happen. Yahusha said it had to happen, right? That's not for us. Yasharal, your eyes should be on Yahuah. Your ears should be tuned in to his Ruach, so that his will be done on earth as it is in the Shamayam. That's it, and that's all, right? So again, my encouragement to you as my mashpakat is, when you see these things happening, especially if you see them happening between brothers and sisters in Yasharal, discern what's going on and allow Yahuah to use you in that moment, if necessary, to alleviate a situation. Because I want to leave you with this very, very last thing. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called sons of Yahuah. Understand that being a peacemaker does not mean you are a docile person that's always kumbaya, can't we all just get along? A peacemaker is someone that brings people to Yahusha. You're a witness to Yahusha. You witness, you testify of Yahusha. Someone hears your testimony, they come to Yahusha themselves, and now they have peace with Yahuah through Yahusha. Yahusha is the peace offering. Romans 5:1 tells us that. We don't have peace unless we come through Yahusha. We don't have peace with Yahuah unless we come through Yahusha. So when you testify of Yahusha to people as a witness of Yahusha, and then someone hears the testimony, right? Then they go to Yahusha for themselves, and now they enter into Yahuah's house through Yahusha. You've become a peacemaker. You've helped them make peace with Yahuah through Yahusha. That is what the peacemakers are. Okay? And that's what we're supposed to be doing. Iron sharpening iron is not necessarily us teaching each other, but it is us reminding each other of what the word says in a moment of weakness. Again, going back to those moments where I say sometimes we just have bad moments. If a brother or sister is around you when you're having a bad moment, they are supposed to encourage you in that moment, especially if they know that you're somebody that typically doesn't have bad moments, but you're having one right now. You know this person, you've observed this person long enough to know that they are a good tree, but they're having a bad moment. Why would you try to make them feel like a piece of trash in that moment? Because they are not walking perfectly. It makes me think of Eliphaz, Job's friend, who was like, yeah, this spirit came to me at nighttime and I was scared of it and I didn't really see what it looked like, but, it came to me. And basically he was trying to tell Job that, you going through what you're going through because you did something, because ain't no way you ain't did something. But if you go back to the very beginning of the book of Job, you see the whole reason why Job was going through any of that is because Hasatan said something about the situation, and Yahuah was like, have you tried my servant Job? Like, and then Hasatan was like, yo, he don't have no reason not to praise you. And then that's what catapulted everything that happened in Job's life. Job did nothing. As a matter of fact, it said that Yahuah counted Job as being perfect. You know what I'm saying? So with that being said, that's that is discerning the type of person that's around you. If you know that you usually walk in righteousness, but you're having a bad moment, and then that person takes the opportunity to kick you while you're down, discern that. Make a mental check, okay? And you might want to hold that in your reserves and start paying more attention to that person, because Yahuah is showing you something in that moment. You don't have to clap back. You don't have to get irritated. You don't even have to be offended. Just understand that Yahuah has given you a gift to see something beyond what you are normally able to see. Use that gift. It is for your good. Okay? Okay? If you see your brother or sister in a bad moment, encourage them so they can get back up and they can walk with you. All right? All right. Love you guys. Much ahaba and shalom.